Look, I'm Dr. Tony. Today we talk about how do we help our children deal with stress. I'm not a clinical therapist. A lot of people are not, so I talked to Norina. That's her specialty. She's a clinical mental health therapist. Yes, exactly, that's what it is. At that point, she helps children and also teenagers to understand how to deal with stress appropriately to basically independently get themselves healthy. Okay? As parents, to realize we're an important role to get our kids the right person to talk to understand how to deal with them appropriately from a therapist perspective. Also realize we as parents have a responsibility to actually become part of that overall care sometimes. So this is a long video, about 20 minutes long, giving you the short version, the highlights from it, about probably 4 things. What is normal child behavior along with teenage behavior, and how do parents ourselves help them in that process dealing with their stress. Okay, the second part is going to be is what's important for them to get healthy and stay healthy. Realize mental stress is sometimes affected by someone's chemistry, nutrition, their diet, and how much exercise they do get. So it'll be a second part of this overall video. Just realize, as parents, we don't know everything, okay? So once we realize that, you put good care, like someone like Norina to actually help us understand, help our children and ourselves to understand how to make our life easy, less stressed, and more relaxed, right? Hope you enjoyed this quick video. See you next time. Have a great day. Okay. And you mentioned earlier too, a normal 8-year-old boy or girl. What is that? What is normal?
Yeah, probably shouldn't use the term normal because it's a little subjective. But sometimes people will come in and say, you know, my child has a hard time paying attention in class.
Okay.
He or she's very fidgety. Things like that. I think the school system sometimes has this, ideology that children are supposed to do that. They're supposed to sit at a desk for hours a day, and that's difficult. That's difficult for me. I can't sit through a 2-hour meeting sometimes without fidgeting or getting up. And so sometimes it might be just a little bit of perspective. So yeah, but like I said, is it inhibiting their daily life? Is it inhibiting the family's functioning? You know, anxiety. Is it that the child, is holding on to you, won't leave you in the mornings, won't go places, so now the family is kind of homebound. Everyone's kind of walking on eggshells because they don't want to upset the child, or maybe a sibling is feeling left out because there's so much attention going to one child because that child's having a pretty significant issue going on. So that's when I would say, come on in, let's talk. You know, it's never going to hurt to talk for a consultation.
What's a good time frame for that to be considered a condition or something to get consulted?
I would say for a kid, for adults, we typically say, if it's been going on 2 weeks, then it's considered, a certain level of functioning. Children take a little bit more time to adapt. I would give kids, if it's a new environment or a new situation or a new thing that's happened, give them a little time to adjust. Lots of reassurance. A lot of validation. It can, as parents, a lot of times we want it to stop. So we tell them things like, stop worrying, you don't have anything to worry about. You know? So, saying things like, I can see how this would be scary for you. Oh, I understand. Yeah, this is a new thing. Lots of validation. And, if it's going on for 6 weeks. And if it's, again, extreme. So, just for my self-disclosure, my own child had some separation anxiety. And, I start to think about, well, how much is it bothering her? Well, it was just happening in the mornings. She's fine once she gets in the classroom, does her work, getting good grades, socializing, playing on the playground. It's fine. She, and it's continuing to decrease. Now, if I was hearing that it was happening, all throughout the day, every day for weeks on end, I'd take her in.
And going from, say, elementary school to a teenager or junior high area, maybe early high school, how is that approached differently?
Well, teenagers, they exhibit it differently. They usually do a little bit more withdrawn behavior, a lot of isolating, teenagers, their social circle is super important. That's developmentally appropriate. And again, as parents, a lot of times we're like, they don't want to spend time with us, but that's normal. And so if you see them not socializing, like maybe they had a group of friends, they're no longer talking with their friends. I know obviously social media is big. They're not communicating any longer with their friends online, or maybe something stressful happened there. That whole thing is going on, with bullying that goes on social media. I would try to communicate with them, and again, I know it's hard. Teenagers aren't usually big talkers, but communicate if something happened, did something happen at school, things like that, to try to get an idea of what might be going on.
Okay.
And again, if you're seeing this happen for weeks on end, then seeing if they'll come in and talk to someone. Obviously, when you get a teenager, it might be a little more difficult to get them in the door.
Yeah.
But again, once they come in, we typically have tools that help them feel, like this isn't something that's silly, or,
this is normal, but how do we deal with this and find a solution for
exactly.
it? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And then at that point, same thing, do parents bring them in, or you kind of see them on their own at that point, or what's...
Parents, yeah. Okay. So one good thing that I'm glad you said that is because...
I know everything, I just...
Right?
No questions asked. Yes, guessing.
Is kids get better faster if parents are involved.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
got
so...
It's not brushing on, hey, here's your therapy appointment, take care of your problem, and come back and you'll be good.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that happens sometimes. And we try to be upfront with that from the beginning to kind of set the scenario. Like, a child is just one part of a family dynamic. There are usually lots of other people involved. Even if it's an only child, there's typically at least a parent. Sometimes there's extended family members that are involved. And so, kids get better faster if parents are involved. So we'll, a lot of what the approach here that we try to take is, we do the intake first with the parent to get some background information. And then, then we talk with the child alone if they're okay with that. And then we try to do check-ins with the parents at least monthly.
Okay.
If it's necessary to do it more often, we absolutely will do it more often.
Okay.
And then parents are welcome to have like what we call them collateral sessions. That's like a technical term.
Sure.
But basically they can schedule to have an appointment to come in and maybe talk about the challenges they're having at home, so that they can get some ideas on ways to deal with their child. Now, I will say children do have confidentiality in the state of California, so we can't divulge everything that's talked about, but we most certainly can take in information and give feedback on how to work with those situations.
At that point, you're giving them tools when I go home with my kid, how to communicate with them, how to work out with them, how do I figure out how to make our relationship better.
Yes.
How about nutrition? What's a good nutrition balance per se?
Same thing. If your kid's eating, Takis at lunch, then we might want to take a look at what they're doing.
How would that affect their overall emotional, psychological health?
I
know, but so they know. So
they know. Well, again, as they need food to fuel their brain, and they're at school for such long hours, and they're learning, and again they probably have to be quiet and sit still. And so if you're flooding them with sugar, or you're flooding or they're flooding themselves, sometimes like teenagers, for instance, a lot of times they're just feeding themselves at school.
Red Bull, sugar,
exactly,
caffeine, Starbucks are good.
And then they're wondering why they're having trouble paying attention in class, lacking motivation, feeling tired during the day. We know that sugar spike happens, and then they crash and they're falling asleep in fourth period or whatever. So we take a good look at this, and sometimes just doing it, we call it psychoeducation with the parents and with the children.
What is that?
Psychoeducation?
Yes.
Just providing information to them that educates them on what they're doing and how that might be affecting them.
Got it.
So we'll talk about that, and again, sometimes talking about it, then they're like, okay,
that
I get
makes
it.
sense
and
now.
There's this magic thing that happens where sometimes kids will listen to somebody else and not necessarily parents.
It's not magical, consistent. Very consistent. Being a parent myself.
Exactly.
Okay. And a lot to do with that nutrition and how much sleep you're doing. How about exercise? How is that important to them?
Exercise is very important as well. Again, it just promotes their brain activity, and think of all the things, like even adults, I'll say, I think exercising outside is great, because as opposed to like in a room with four walls,
treadmill.
Right, because you're getting all of this other stimuli that happens in our natural environment that our bodies really crave. And so kids should be playing soccer. They should be running. They should be playing imagination and making mud pies and doing all of those things. And I know we live, again, in a society that's very technologically advanced. And yes. So, I think a little bit of that, actually, I say, my thing is, I say a little of that is okay, because we also don't want them to get far behind. They're going to end up in high school with a Chromebook and not know how to use it.
Exactly. So, that's the problem.
Right.
That's a transition from a paper book as we grew up, and that's how we learned, a paper book and pen and paper versus an iPad, a stick in your thumbs. Exactly. So if you're going to learn this way, in my sense, again, I'm just a chiropractor, that's how you're going to learn, continue to understand that's how you're going to progress through school
Sure.
down the line. So
Right.
I think that's important, like you mentioned. But the play is so huge in the sense where I do a lot of talks and I do a lot of my own workshops. Is when you move, your body produces neurology to
Absolutely.
your brain chemistry to your adrenals. At that point, your hormones and your chemical balances stay normal.
Exactly.
You tolerate stress.
Physiology.
I know the stuff, but they
Physiologically
may not be
how it happens,
chiropractors or
right?
people with big student loans out there
Sure,
too.
sure. Yeah, so to
The
keep
movement.
all of the good feeling chemicals in the brain
Huge.
up. So sometimes I'll give, I don't have one right now, but I
Sure.
would like a snow globe
Nice.
analogy. So, if you're not moving, if you're not feeding your body well, then it's like all the little snow is at the bottom,
Exactly.
And so when you go out into and play and do all of those things, it shakes up and it makes you feel so much better. It also helps you sleep.
Huge.
Children need outside time, and it will help them sleep.
It's amazing that people don't, and it's something because we're so used to being indoors, I think,
Right.
in school and at home, that we lose that ability to go for a walk.
Right. And then again, from a perspective for mental health, the other thing is, like I had mentioned earlier about play
Yes.
being a child's language. If you ever listen to your kid playing imagination, you'll hear themes. You'll see things. And a lot of times they can work out their own stuff
Oh,
just
okay.
in their own play. Right.
Give them that space.
Exactly.